He lives in a big, noisy and crowded city with a busy rhythm of life. But he is interested in another world. A world with no fuss, where a person lives preserving the heritage of his ancestors and the precepts of nature. Konstantin Kuksin, an ethnographer, traveler, a current member of the Russian Geographical Society, as well as the founder and director of the Museum of Nomadic Culture in Moscow. Nomads of the Great Steppe are his favorite topic, and he can talk about it for hours.
Про кочевую цивилизацию.
About the nomadic civilization that, like a patchwork quilt, covers our planet. We will talk about all of this on the sacred land of Ulitau. Welcome to Ulitau. Konstantin Kuksin in the new season of Dala Project. My museum, a museum of nomadic culture, was once created for children and for children only. I dreamed of making a museum which would be interesting for children. And traveling around the world, visiting different peoples who still lead a nomadic lifestyle, working with them, studying their culture, I always focused on raising children, on games and traditions associated with the upbringing of children, and then tried to bring it to the museum in Moscow.
Принести и обыграть в музее в Москве.
Today, I will ask Zaypin Kasanbayeva to talk about Kazakh traditions associated with raising children.
Зайпин.
Hello.
Саламатсыз.
Саламатсыз. Зайпин, скажите, какие...
Zaypin, tell me, what traditions of bringing up the future generation do Kazakhs have?
Будущего поколения.
Ол тек қана қазақта емес, кез келген халықта.
Not only the Kazakh people, but any other nation associates its future with the younger generation. Its role is undoubtedly important. The existence of any ethnic group largely depends on it. In Kazakhs, this dependence is most pronounced.
Қазақта ұрпақтың көп болуы, мысалы, көшпелі тұрмыс.
For example, they believe that the more heirs there are, the better it is for the nomadic lifestyle. Therefore, having many children is one of the traditional values.
Баланың көп болуын ең басты құндылық деп санайды. Қазақ айтады, бір баласы бардың, шығар шықпас жаны бар дейді. Екі баласы бардың.
There's a Kazakh saying, he who has one child is barely alive. He who has two is himself whole. He who has three has a continuation of himself, and he who has four has pastures full of cattle, meaning the more the richer. You can see how important a place bringing up children and the preservation of folk traditions that underlie it occupy in the worldview of the Kazakhs.
Бала тәрбиесі жөнінде көп айта беруге болады. Сондықтан да сөзді көп.
We can talk about raising children for a long time, but it is better to see it with your own eyes. You will find the answer to your question not far from here, just 10 kilometers away, in the village of Sarlık, where you can see the traditional Kazakh upbringing for yourself.
Балалар менен біршама дәстүрлерді көрсетпекші, өз көзіңізбен көріп қайтыңыз.
Let's go with pleasure.
Айналайын қарағым, қал жақсыма сала бермей, көзіңді ар жақсыға.
Я смотрю, здесь 3 женщины сидят, девчонки.
I see 3 women sitting here. That's a lot of people to make such a small rug. Where does the she rug production begin?
Вот изготовление чия.
Making she takes a lot of effort. It begins in the fall with the preparation of the acnetherum plant, known in Kazakh as she. We harvest it in places of growth when it reaches a certain height.
Аршығаннан кейін оны боялған жіптерменен шидің.
After cleaning, each reed is wrapped with dyed yarn and then tied together to form an ornament. This is a very beautiful interior design piece made using natural paints and components. Girls also take part in the manufacturing process. They help fluff wool and make yarn. This is women's work, so it is widely used to educate teenage girls.
Көрсетіліп жасалды.
Текеметтің түріндей ай, өтіп дәурен бара.
Это довольно простой рисунок.
This is a fairly simple pattern, a simple alternation of colored stripes. But you can also make complex patterns, like on carpets. If you make a she with a complex pattern, how long will the craftswomen take to make it?
Буду делать, метр, допустим, чьи.
They will need a day or two.
If I remember correctly, on average, a yurt needs 16 to 18 rugs like that. This is several weeks of work.
Несколько недель работы.
In all the peoples of Central Asia, be it Kyrgyz or Kazakhs, it depends on the number of rafters in a yurt and the length of the reed.
Үйдің қанатына байланысты.
What is such a labor-intensive mat needed for?
Циновка.
Негізінен ши тұтылған үй әсемдік біріншіден. Екіншіден, далада...
Such mats are, first of all, very beautiful. Secondly, the steppes of Kazakhstan, where yurts are set up, are full of snakes and black widows. So the she mat is used to protect against dangerous insects and so that rodents would not go through the cells of the wall. This is also a good protection against dust and sandstorms. In addition, the social status of the family was judged by the decor elements. The better the tastes of the house owners were, the higher was their social status.
Кестерді, топырақтарды сақтап қалады. Шиына қарап, үйінің әлеуметтік жағдайын анықтаған. Егер ши әдемі болса, ол үйде әлеуметтік жағдай жоғары деп есептелген.
И действительно так. Скажем, монголы, которые тоже...
Indeed, the Mongols who also live in yurts never use she mats. Look underneath, the felt and the whole steppe will be visible, because the winters in Mongolia are extremely cold, minus 50 degrees Celsius. In what weather neither snakes, nor scorpions, nor spiders survive. By the way, the Mongols who live in the south, in China, do use such mats. Only they put it outside the felt. In the Chinese province of Inner Mongolia, people for some reason place the mat outside the yurt. Looks very nice.
Эти орнаменты, эти яркие цвета, это все, конечно, красоты.
Cross-stitching. My grandmother, who was born in Austria, used this method. The Bedouin women with whom I spoke in northern Sahara also used this method. All over the world, there is the art of cross-stitching. What is the peculiarity of the Kazakh method?
Именно казахского искусства.
Қазақтағы кесте тігу өнеріндегі бір ерекшелік бересіз бе?
The peculiarity of the Kazakh embroidery is that the threads are pulled out of the remnants of fabrics. They are called sortpakjip, pulled-out threads. These threads are used for embroidery, depending on the color of the threads available and the desired pattern.
Суырылған жіптен инелерді сабақтап, қазақ бір сабақ жіп, я болмаса бір суыртпақ жіп деп аталады.
То есть используются нитки.
That is, you use threads from patches of fabric, which, for example, in Russia, are used for patching clothes. But here they are disassembled into separate threads, right? And girls embroider with these threads.
И вышивают девочки.
Осындай таным бар, этнографиялық таным қазақтағы бұл этнографиялық категория былайша.
This, one might say, is an ethnographic category of art. In the art of embroidery, the word sortpak refers to a separately pulled out thread. Rationality, economy, and environmental friendliness. This is common to all nomadic peoples.
Есептелген, барлық өнерде есептелген осының бәрі. Әсіресе қол өнерінде.
It's great that little girls are learning this craft in the age of consumption when you can buy everything and immediately throw it away. This is a very useful skill, useful practice. We won't save the world from the garbage if we just sort it. We will save the planet and make it clean by reusing every thread, as your ancestors did, and as these girls do. Well done.
Молодцы. Assalamu alaikum.
Nurlan, a game like this is found among different peoples. The Arabs play kalak. Your neighbors, the Kyrgyz, play tuguz kogulu. What is the essence of the game?
Тоғызқұмалақ жалпы қазақтың ұлттық ойыны.
Tuguz Kumalak is a Kazakh national game that takes its origin from the ancient times. It was once called the game of shepherds. When they grazed sheep, they collected pebbles from the ground, the kumalaks. This is how the game came to be. The board of the Tuguz Kumalak has 9 holes on each side. Each hole contains 9 stones. Players alternately make moves counterclockwise, rearranging all kumalaks from any of their holes to the next ones, one at a time. If the last kumalak made an odd number of stones in a hole, then you get nothing. And if it made even, for example, 4, 6, or 10, then you take all the kumalaks from this hole into your bank, the so-called kazandik. This is your kazandik. This is mine. That is, there are 2 of them. All the stones you win, you place there. There is one more rule.
Содан кейін егер де сіз жүріс жүріп жатқан кезде тағы бір ережесі отауда
You must calculate your moves and understand which hole to play from. So you take 9 kumalaks from your hole, and now you are counting them where the last one will fall. You do the calculation mentally, of course. You count with your eyes. For example, this hole has 9 and this hole has 10. And you calculate in advance how many stones will be in which hole. Only an even number gives you points in the form of 1 kumalaks and the number 3. 3 makes a tuzdik, meaning that hole becomes yours. All stones from this hole go to your kazandik.
негізге отауыңызға түссе, сіз ешқандай ұпай ала алмайсыз. Келесі мына кісінің жүрісі болады.
Nurlan, how do you rate the difficulty of the game? Which is more difficult, chess or Tuguz Kumalak?
Әр ойынның оңайы жоқ. Бұл тоғызқұмалақ негізі баланың ойлауға.
Each game is difficult in its own way. Tuguz Kumalak helps develop mathematical and logical thinking. The child counts in his mind, trying to understand which move will bring him the most points.
Ойлау арқылы өзінің ойлау қабілетін дамыта алады. Негізінен тоғызқұмалақ ежелден келе жатқандықтан қойшылар далада жүргендіктен ол кезде оқу жоқ, жазу жоқ.
Since the game is very ancient and there were no schools then, Tuguz Kumalak helped to teach counting. And thus, with the help of the game, the shepherds learned to count their livestock.
Тоғызқұмалақ әлемдік ойынға енгізілді. Әлем бойынша тоғызқұмалақ ойналады. Әр жерлерде, әлемдік деңгейде, Бразилия, Францияда да тоғызқұмалақ международный бүкіл жалпы әлемдік ойынға кіргізілді. Ендігі қазақтардың осы олимпиада.
Tuguz Kumalak is included in the list of intangible cultural heritage. Competitions are held at the international level in different countries such as Brazil or France. Thus, Tuguz Kumalak is recognized as an international game. The next step is to include it in the list of Olympic Games.
Нелері ғұламалары осы тоғызқұмалаққа қызығып отыр. Ұсыныс бірақ. Бізде қазір Kazakhstanda
a lot of international prize winners are our youth. Kyrgyz and Mongols also take prizes. The 3 countries hold the world championship titles in this game. They are all nomadic people.
үш мемлекет осы үштікті бермей келеді.
Are there any world champions in Togiz Kumalak? Who is the best player in your opinion?
Бәрі аралас болады ойында.
Players are not divided by countries, Kazakhs, Mongols or Kyrgyz. With whom you will play is determined only by a draw. There are some Kazakhs playing for the Mongolian team, for example. The game decides all. Both Kazakhs and Kyrgyz take part in the qualifying tournaments. They support each other.
Қолдау көрсетіп жатады.
Нурлан, тогда я желаю...
Nurlan, then I wish your students to win so that they could carry a high rank of Kazakhs, being the best players in a very difficult game, which, to be honest, I still have not mastered. Good luck to you and your students.
Вашим студентам.
Рахмет. Жақсы.
Zepin, many thanks for the opportunity to be a part of the living tradition of raising children in Ulitau. Zepin, what values do parents try to instill in their children in the first place?
During the trip to the Sarlık village, you saw with your own eyes the role that is given to education at school in the family.
Тәрбие жұмыстарын өз көзіңізбен көрдіңіз. Қазақтың тәрбиесі
Like other peoples, Kazakhs raise children in a spirit of universal values. They instill respect for their ancestors, their precepts, encourage love for work, the pursuit of friendship and collectivism.
Қадірлеу, үлкендерді сыйлау, еңбек тәрбиесі және көпшілдікке тәрбиелеу, бауырмалдыққа тәрбиелеу. Әрине отбасында ер баланың, қыз баланың...
Of course, sons and daughters are raised differently. But even so, in most cases, they tried not to make any distinctions. For example, the Kazakhs have tör, a place of honor in the house, which belongs to a woman, and the house belongs to a man. The point is that girls were also brought up in the atmosphere of honor and respect. They too were pampered. In the end, that led to equality.
Еркелетіп өсірген, ер баламен қатар өсірген.
Tell me, if we were to separate the childhood into periods, what stages stand out in the upbringing and growing up of a child among the Kazakhs of Ulitau?
In our country, we pay a lot of attention to the upbringing of the younger generation at all stages of life. And the traditions of bringing the children up from the first steps until his or her coming of age occupy a special place in this process.
Қазақ айтады, бесікте бала 5 түлейді дейді.
The Kazakhs have a saying, a child molts 5 times while in the cradle, or besik in Kazakh. This is about the stages of their physiological development. The first stage is when the baby learns how to hold the head up. The second is when the muscles begin to strengthen. The third is when the baby is already sitting on their own. The fourth is when they learn to crawl. And the fifth is when the baby takes their first steps.
Отыра бастауы. Бесінші түлек баланың екі аяғынан тік тұрып жүре бастауы. Бұл оның мінезінің қалыптасуына, оны шыдамдылыққа.
And all these stages are important from the point of view of cultivating patience and the formation of character in general. There were cases when a child was placed in a cradle until the age of 5. That is, his head and legs would no longer fit. The cradle, or besik, takes an important place in the Kazakh way of life. We have an expression, from a wooden cradle to a cradle in the ground.
Тәрбиенің бастауы осы бесіктен басталады. Тал бесіктен жер бесікке дейін деп айтатын сондықтан.
So, besik accompanies a person from birth to death. You know, if I had to choose the symbol of the Turkic civilization, I would choose besik, because not only nomads, but also sedentary Turkic peoples have the cradles. They are almost the same, save for the nuances in the ornament. Zepin, tell me, the children in the Sarlık village, which we just visited, are they introduced to some ancient dying traditions as well?
Өзіңіз болған Сарлық ауылы ол текке таңдап алынған жоқ, өйткені
We went to the Sarlık village for a reason. The people there preserve the folk traditions very carefully. The young people of this village are rarely caught committing offenses, administrative or otherwise, because there they focus on ethnic education. For example, the Kazakhs have a very ancient tradition called kogindeu, and it is closely connected with the nomadic way of life.
Ер балалардың тәрбиесінде мысалы қазақтың ежелден келе жатқан дәстүрі мысалы көгендеу, мал көгендеу, ұсақ малдарды көшпелі тұрмыста мал шешуші роль атқарды.
As you may know, in the nomadic economy, the breeding of small cattle was also important. We're talking about goats and sheep, which nomads domesticated a long time ago. And during the milking process, to keep the lambs away, the nomads used the so-called kugin. Kugin is a long rope tied between two trees. Every 30 to 40 centimeters, a noose is tied to the main rope, which are then used to tie down the lambs.
Қозыларды отырғызатын жіп байланады. Көктем шығып, мал төлдегеннен кейін көген құрғанда.
The kugin was usually installed in the spring when the sheep produced a progeny. This occasion was usually celebrated. The Kazakhs have a word, kugindik, meaning a present for the occasion of kugin. This is when animal offspring from the first lambing are given to children of the household, especially to the grandchildren born from daughters.
Көгендік байлау деп айтады. Бұл бір жағынан қойдың ешкінің сүтін пайдалану болса, екінші жағынан
Kugin, on the one hand, helps to milk the animals without a fuss, and on the other, contributes to a better grazing of adult animals, since the young will not get under your feet.
жайылмайды ғой. Малдың еркін жайылып, жақсы отығу үшін қажет нәрсе. Осы көген кезінде
This is also a way of raising children in order to instill in them a love for work. The children are trusted to care for the lambs, while the parents watch over the adult animals.
қойшының үлесі болса, оны бағып күту. Ал қозы лақты бағу балалардың еңбегі ауылдағы. Біздің қазақта
Sheep and goat milk has always been in the diet of the Kazakh people. It was consumed in various forms. It was used to make national dairy products, kurt, ırımşık, and cheese, that are so good for the children's health. Dairy goats and sheep were kept separately from the whole flock, and after the rest of the flock was driven to the pastures in the morning, the kugin was prepared. It was installed when it was time for milking.
болған уақытта осындай көген қазығын құрады. Әрбір көгеннің арасы 30 сантиметрден болады.
This is called kogin bırshağı. Figuratively speaking, kogin peas. Lambs were tied to them. If the dairy animal was too stubborn, it was also tied to the rope and then milked. After milking, the lambs were released. The whole process is called kogindeu in Kazakh, and the rope itself, with the nooses, is the kogin.
Мынау көгеннің бұршақтары. Негізінде бірінші тұрған қозы қасиетті осы бүкіл
The lamb, which was tied first, is considered the leader and regarded as special. Therefore, nomads didn't pierce its ear or put a tag on him until the age of 2.
жетілгенше олар бауыздалмайды.
Подобным образом
The same tying method is used with reindeer. Only instead of a rope, a log is used, and 10 to 20 deer are tied to this log. They can also tie the females before milking. Looks very similar.
привязывают 10-20 оленят. Или также привязывают важенок, самочек, перед дойкой. То есть очень похожий способ.
It's called kogen basi, right? And there it is called turbash. Bash and bas both mean head.
Бұл негізінде балалар
This tradition helped in accustoming children to work.
дәстүрлердің бірі, салттардың.
В воротах колеса
While the wheel of time is turning, not only ancient civilizations flicker, but also the life of a person passes from birth to death. And probably the most important period of life is childhood. The wheel of time does not spin by itself, it is spun by people. And in order to have someone to spin the wheel further, people need to raise children.
детей.